talking about GOP doublespeak. George Stephanopoulos of This Week had Congressman Steve Scalise on about the aid that they are supposed to be given to Israel, the military aid that is being offset by no longer hiring the IRS agents to take care of tax fraud. Well, Steve Scalise first said, well, look, as it turns out, if you look at what the CBO said, the Congressional Budget Office says, it's gonna cost the middle class America, those making $400,000 or less, up to $4 billion more in taxes and President Biden promised that he wasn't going to do that. And, at the same time, he said, but you can't listen to the CBO when it says that the budget deficit will be increased by not hiring these guys. I want you to listen to how silly Steve Scalise sounded when confronted by George Stephanopoulos, but also that he is able to do it without feeling the shame and embarrassment that comes with such a double talk. Check this out. We'll take it on the other side.
As you know, this funding request that you've put through is dead on arrival in the Senate. You've tied the aid to Israel to cuts in IRS enforcement, which is designed to go after wealthy tax cheats. Why combine those two? Is the new speaker prepared to put clean funding for Israel on the floor of the House?
Well, actually, even the CBO says that some of that money would be going after low and middle income families. But at the end of the day, we passed a bill that addressed two problems that our Defense Department talks about. One, we need to get aid to Israel, and we do. But when our generals come and testify before committees like Armed Services, they say our debt is our biggest national threat, not other countries like China, Russia. They say it's our debt. We addressed both in this bill, and we got a bipartisan vote, George, and I think that's important, too.
But let me just stop you. Let me just stop you right there. You say you addressed the debt. In fact, and you're the one who referenced the CBO. The CBO said that this proposal you put on the floor that you passed the House is actually going to increase the deficit, not reduce the debt.
Well, only CBO would say reducing the size of government.
Well, you just cited the CBO. That's their analysis. It's going to reduce it because you're taking away enforcement.
But the CBO said it's going to actually hit people making under $400,000 a year with $4 billion in new taxes. That violates President Biden's own pledge, by the way, that he made to low-income families. He promised he wouldn't raise their taxes. CBO said it would be a $4 billion hit to those families. At the end of the day, we passed the bill to give the aid to Israel, and it was a bipartisan vote, and it's over in the Senate. If the Senate has an issue with the bill, they can take it up. If they send it to the president, I have no doubt the president would sign that bill because that gives Israel the aid that they need, again, with a bipartisan vote out of the House.
Hey, Congressman, I'm confused. You cite the CBO approvingly when they agree with the proposal, when they agree with your conclusions, and you dismiss them when they disagree?
The CBO has been wrong on a number of fronts, and you can go look at how well that's documented. The bottom line is they do acknowledge that about $4 billion in new taxes would hit low and middle income families. That's something that violates President Biden's own promise he made during the campaign.
They also say quite explicitly it's going to increase the deficit.
Now, Steve Scalise. I tell you what is so disappointing here. First of all, Steve Scalise comes out and he says, you know what? It turns out that it's going to cost more money to the middle class if we go ahead and hire those people. Okay, that's what he says. But what he doesn't say is, I don't care who is actually committing the fraud. The tax fraud could be committed by rich people, or the tax fraud could be committed by middle class people. That middle class people are going to be billed $4 billion more in taxes. And of course, there's a whole ton of middle class folks. $4 billion for taxes they owe. That is not an increase in taxes for the middle class. It's just having people pay the amount of taxes that they have due. And if $4 billion comes from the people making $400,000 or less, that's not an increase by President Biden. That is an increase that is them paying what they're supposed to pay and not hiding from paying it. And if you want to take a look at it, here is what it says on the CBO. It says CBO confirms Inflation Act unleashes IRS audits and enforcement on families making less than $400,000. But how does it do that again? Because it bills them for the tax cheating that they did. In other words, they would have gotten away with something and they pay what they're supposed to pay. The double speak is amazing the way these guys did it. It is amazing that in the same sentence, in the same interview, you can say, the CBO said this, so we should believe it. And then when it goes against him, the CBO is not always right. The CBO, you can't believe what the CBO says. Come on, folks. Can't you see these guys are frauds?
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.